Thank you for having us. My name's Tim Giuliani. I work here locally in Orlando, leading economic development efforts. It's an honor to have you, and I want to set the stage for this group as you sit here in Orlando with a panel of experts from Orlando. I'll give you a quick 90-second synopsis. So to you or to visitors, people think they know Orlando. But when you dig into the history and you understand the space race was launched from here, when you realize Lockheed, who we'll hear from momentarily, was here before Disney, that our university, that's the second largest in America, was set up to provide talent to the space program. There's a deep technological history here in Central Florida. And that is fed, there's 91,000 people now in tech in Orlando. 16% of our economic output is from tech. And you could see many of these rankings have Orlando as an emerging tech hub. And part of that is just the underlying technology that's here as sort of post-pandemic, a little bit more disbursement of tech around the country. This digital twin of Central Florida that we built, it's the largest of its kind. It was built here in Orlando. There's more Unity developers in Orlando than anywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. So this helps us to communicate with companies that are looking to grow and expand about why Orlando might work for them. So let me first pose the question of just understanding how your organization is already using AI. Juan, would you like to go first?
Yes, so we actually use AI in two areas. And we're cautious users of AI. We've taken an approach where we actually interact with technology early. We do test and learn. We deploy technology in small areas, and then we deploy it in larger endeavors. Today, we use AI in two modes. One was what people were talking about the previous panel, which is we use it as something that can actually save time. We use it to analyze transcriptions. We use it to generate summaries. And that's a very, I think, transactional use of the technology. Where we have found the most impact is in actually having it be a creative voice in the room. Right. We actually have this situation where you have 4 people or 5 people collaborating on something, and we actually add a sixth. And that sixth individual or fifth individual is actually a model. And we actually set it up to almost hallucination level so that we can actually use it to explore blind spots that we're not looking at, and to actually inject newness into the conversation. Those are the two main areas, aside from having used AI in data analytics for a decade now, which I guess everyone in the room is already using, whether they call it AI or not.
Right. David?
Well, I'm sure our students are using it. But there's actually some calls for the faculty to embrace that. Yeah. Have those first passes be AI, and then have the students use critical thinking to actually be the human and machine interface working together. I sit at the Institute for Simulation and Training. It's one of the oldest and largest of its kind in the world, and really sets the tone for the epicenter of simulation being here in Orlando. It's a $7 billion industry. It's bigger than the space industry at this point, too. And that's when you just stay in the little quarter-mile research park where the military is. If you get out to the theme parks and everywhere else, it's much bigger, probably closer to 20 billion. So those are some of the things that when you look at AI as a superpower alongside simulation, you can do things like start to use it for predictive analytics to track our hurricanes and other things that come through here. Looking at the space launches and timing of those and long-term duration space missions. Those are all the things that AI is being used for. It's being used for the psychological profiling, for knowing who could go into space, long duration, and those type of space missions. It's, of course, being used for some of the meetings and acceleration of some of the core business practices and processes, too. Across the board, we're seeing it as a horizontal technology that goes across many different vertical industries, all of which we're trying to train in a large, very diverse public university here at UCF. Those are some of the things that we're seeing across the board. Of course, our military is using it. We're a large military-friendly university. And that's created a lot of opportunities for, again, our very diverse population, one of the largest minority-serving institutions in the U.S.
Thanks, David. Stephen?
So, if I think about AI in the aerospace and defense industry, particularly at Lockheed Martin, there's obviously the, how do we inject it into our products and services on behalf of the U.S. government and our allies? But even on the, what you might call the back shop or the process side of the house, we're actively using AI for things like factory space planning, facilitization. How do we better tool? How do we ensure that our products are more reliable? Using AI and machine learning, for instance, to iron out defects early in the process. We've even seen huge leaps in time as far as how long it takes to manufacture a product, because in many cases, characterizing, say, a radar takes a lot of time, very expensive assets to be able to do that. And so AI has been able to actually help us kind of guide as to how to characterize it more quickly. And that allows us, obviously, to be able to increase our throughput on the production factory floor. So that's just on the backside how AI is being implemented today and really helping us get product out the door.
Okay. Let me now ask you a question a little bit more narrowing in your field. One, starting with you, talk about experiential entertainment and AI and how you've begun to see things change.
Right. So one of the things that we try to do, and hopefully you guys will have a chance to experience some of that if you haven't, is in the end, the work that we do as developers is really as experience builders. It's how you feel when you go into the, toilets in the wave and the toilet opens for you and you're not used to that, or it's how we actually add music and color to every part of the environment. So for us, experiences are critical. Now, the ability to craft stories is something that has been tremendously expensive, right? It's something that requires a lot of hand-holding. And those stories sometimes are overt, where we have someone that's talking, like when we were listening to the panel earlier today, but sometimes they are told with colors and music. So today we use AI to help create those kinds of experiences. We have this idea of not just storytelling, but story doing, which is allowing the interaction of people with the environment to actually help craft a story. And that's us. The other thing that we do, and this is something that the Orlando Economic Development team does very well too, is we try to create an environment where entrepreneurs, big or small, entrepreneurial companies, can actually bring some of that here. So if you walk around Lake Nona today, you will find augmented reality theaters that have been placed next to Boxy Park, where they are using generative AI to be able to tell part of the story. So I would say it's twofold. One is we use it in our own storytelling so that you have memorable experiences in combination with a lot of what people call placemaking, which is the practice of doing it by hand, but also allowing great companies that have decided to call Lake Nona and Orlando home to do it here and to remove any obstacle that they have, to empower them to actually deliver those experiences in a way that it's efficient and that it's meaningful. So those are the two areas that we're trying to do to actually help experiences be, and experience creation, be something that is a critical part of the environment. And AI is definitely helping do that at scale because of how time and resource intensive that process is.
Okay. David, I want to come back to sort of R&D and the university and setting and talk about AI's impact on research and patent generation.
Yeah. So it's been an exciting time in that area too. Of course, research is an economic engine for the whole region, not just for our university and giving our students opportunities. But some of the specific things that have been really instrumental during COVID, using AI for tracking of lung imaging and the automation of that. Looking at that same thing for breast cancer screening too at the NIH, or some of the types of projects that we're seeing. We're also seeing across the board efficiency studies, looking at how AI could be used properly for increasing some of the efficiencies that you all heard about too. How do we train that next generation for that? Give students an opportunity to work shoulder to shoulder with colonels and generals, with VPs and CEOs and presidents of organizations to get that experience that they can't really get in the classroom. That's a way to expand that and kind of have a twofold opportunity. The opportunity to expand research and the opportunity for some of you to try before you buy and see how those students perform, but also for them to get that experience before they actually hit the market. We get to invest in and work with the standards-making organizations too, especially some of those that are looking at privacy and trust. The Linux Foundation has Trustmark. We've been actively involved in some of those standards-making opportunities, the ethics behind that too, and really having both our students and our faculty being very thoughtful about that. And that's what hopefully universities are doing to contribute back to society on that too, in a number of different areas, and how you might use AI for good. We were able to co-host with a number of you, KPMG and Tavistock, a Health Equity and AI conference a couple weeks ago too. And the outcomes of that are going to be things like a book to talk about not just AI by itself, but ABC, AI, blockchain, and cyber, how those are kind of coming together. A number of other disciplines too. And then fill in the blank with the last word, healthcare, energy, fintech, a number of different vertical industries that are all going to be reshaped by AI. That's what's really been incredible about this particular opportunity, the same way that you saw with mobile before, 10 years ago, and 15, 20 years ago before that too with, of course, the internet. I think we're at that same type of inflection point, and we're trying to make sure that we turn the ship of universities and the businesses that we support and the government that we support to be able to drive those new innovations through there.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Stephen, coming back to Lockheed and thinking a little bit more about sort of the aerospace and defense industries, how do you think, what will AI do for that industry?
Yeah, Tim, so, when I think about kind of some of the things we're doing, when you look at the problem that the U.S. has and our allies, we have data coming in from all over the place. We've got satellites, we've got aircraft, we collect data on, SIGINT and ELINT and all of these different intelligence sources. And the United States is incredibly awesome at making sense of that data, like really trying to understand what does it mean. But it takes a lot of people and a lot of time to do that. And as you can imagine, with a lot of people and a lot of time and more data sources out there, it's not scalable, right? It's quite obvious that you just can't throw enough people and have enough time to make sense of it all. So here's where AI helps a lot. AI helps the American soldier, airman, Marine, Guardian, and our allies really trying to understand what's going on in record time. And time is of the essence, right? Especially as our adversaries start using that same AI to think through the problem. The opposite is true as well if you think about sparse data sets, right? Another case where you might not have enough data, having an AI system that can analyze that and kind of give recommendations as to what we think is going on and help steer is key. A great example that is near and dear to my heart is firefighting intelligence as a service. Now, it's not a military application, but it's an application that Lockheed Martin is working on. As a firefighter myself, and I blame one of the guys here in the room for that.
It's Jason.
It is indeed. Jason and I have been working together a long time, 20-some years now, as an Orange County firefighter. And what Lockheed Martin's doing there is we're taking some very, very different data sets and thinking through how do we queue up firefighters for wildland fires. So, David mentioned hurricane predictors and things like that. We're doing the same thing with wildland firefighting. If you have weather models, thank you. Coming in and out. Is that better? All right. If you have weather models and you have fire behavior modeled, and you can see real-time lightning strikes as an example, and you understand the terrain, you can start to put together a model that can give you some very, very good, high-fidelity, real-time intelligence about where a wildfire may break out. That's of importance, right? Wildfires break out all the time, and fire departments may choose not to fight them, may choose to do some defensive techniques, may choose to do something more offensive, and an AI system that we're implementing can help guide that. In fact, as you start bringing in lightning models and things like that, you may actually be able to get ahead of the curve and predict where wildfires might start, which really gives the fire departments a leg up on where they can place their assets, whether or not they start, digging lines, whether or not they start building backfires and whatnot. So there's a great example that we're working with a lot of municipalities to bring AI together with some of these very disparate sources that in the past would have been nearly impossible to model.
Fascinating. Yeah. And not only that, but now putting the two of you together in firefighting, Orlando may have the most sophisticated and technologically advanced fire department. Would love to hear a little bit, Juan, as you think about the future, about what you know now about AI, what do you think going forward, how it's going to shape your organization?
So one of the biggest challenges we have as stewards and as developers is trying to figure out what comes next, right? So one of the areas that we are incredibly excited about is the ability to deploy AI in helping us create what our community needs. Today, we have a very detailed data environment that actually feeds a ton of behavioral data, completely de-identified. There's no PII collected, but we actually collect a ton of data about what people do around Lake Nona, how they connect, where they go next. Now, we use that knowledge to inform our next step, but what we would like to do is really to be able to play SimCity. Right, that's my goal, is to play SimCity with a real life city, and I'm getting pretty close to doing
Digital
that.
twin.
Yeah, I want it to be built then. But the idea is, if we actually use AI to help us iterate, and this is a super complex problem, on what types of buildings, what type of typologies, building mechanisms, everything from fire safety to cost built into the model, it may help us create the next step in what this area of Orlando and Orlando in general is able to do. And having the digital twin for the city and having the digital twin for Lake Nona, it's actually a great start to have kind of like that groundwork and the amount of data that we do. So for us, I mean, it's literally going to touch every part of the work that we do. But today, the one that's most exciting is this ability to create and have an agent help us create what's next that's going to actually drive growth, allow people to thrive, allow people to live their best lives in the environments that we're building.
And I imagine in a fast, for those, if we were having this conference here 15 years ago, we'd probably be sitting in a cow pasture.
Oh, 7 years ago, 6 years ago would be, for this specific place, it would be like 2 years ago.
Right.
The amount of growth that we've seen is phenomenal, but yes.
But for something that's so fast growing, it must be nice to be able to see what it's going to look like in 2 or 3 years, because it's certainly not going to look like this the next time you come back here for a conference.
Exactly, and it will allow us to figure out what not to do. I mean, there's things that come from expertise that, I have the great privilege to work with a group of people that really know what they're doing when it comes to actually building a city. And I come from a completely different world, that this is not what I do. But the most important thing is to help us figure out what not to do. Like, we may not need to build a flat parking area if we know that something's going to be denser in the future, and it may be just better to start building, structured parking, which is what we've done here out of desire, but not necessarily out of known experience. That's going to be the best solution for a town.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, David.
Yeah, so it's great to be sitting in front of some of the great digital twins of the area too, at the city level and the community area too, and just seeing that come into place. But to answer your question, what is our product? Our product is your next generation workforce. Our product is making sure that they understand how to get the productivity gains out of this, and also how to be thoughtful about the things we've heard of earlier, the intellectual property issues, the issues of the ethics of this too, the diversity of this. Those are the things that we're trying to train into the people that you're going to see in not too long, the ones that might actually be helping you through this journey. The way that they help through that journey is by public-private partnerships. The things we do with you and your industry, the great program that you have at UCF that has 350 to 600 graduates going to Lockheed every year too, from our university alone, make it one of the largest, I think it is the largest aerospace provider in the nation. And the digital twin that shows off that data, those data feeds from all sources, from public sources, private sources. Yep. UCF pours their data into there too, which gives you a clear picture of the predictive analytics of what it might be like to be here in a community like Orlando, for instance. So those are the types of things, when we start to work together across that with industry, academia, government, nonprofits, all kind of coming together. That's one of the magics that I see in Orlando that's probably not obvious until you really start to look. Yeah. But if you do bother to take a look, I think that's what you'd see.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to development. There is the current state and there's the future state. Yeah. And within 100 miles of where we're sitting here right now, there's 500,000 college students that will very quickly be in the workforce. And that changeover is probably part of the solution that we're talking about here.
And capitalizing their ideas too, the entrepreneurial side of that too has been a big part of that. The National Science Foundation's really supported UCF in those areas, as have the businesses in the community to give those experiences too. Outside of UCF, we have a venture fund, Global Blockchain Ventures, that tries to do those things too to make sure that there's a way to capitalize and have an economic engine behind some of the great ideas that come out of this community.
Yeah. I think, Stephen, coming back to Lockheed and thinking about the future, I mean, this is very real. There's a lot of, there's several and growing conflicts around the world. And how do you think AI helps to shape your organization going forward?
I mean, it'll be pretty profound for sure. One of the things, when we start talking about, disruptive things, being able to move faster, like, we keep coming back to time as an element, right? And what AI, I think, helps do fundamentally is make things move intelligently faster, right? And so that's one of the things that is compelling to us. But, when I think about our competition is not just business competition, right? In my field, the competition is often the adversary, right? And the adversary, we like to say in the military area, the adversary gets a vote. And the adversary is going to be using AI as well. And of course, the ethical use of AI is a conversation that is constant. We've got, it's kind of funny, just this morning I was reviewing our updated code of conduct, which for the first time actually has an ethical use of AI policy buried in it, which was quite intentional, right? It was very, very intentional to say that when we talk about what's it mean to be an employee of my company, the ethical use of AI in its development is key to that. I don't know necessarily if our adversaries think the same way. And so how do we use it ethically? How do we use it appropriately? How do we use it as a tool for the better? But at the same time, how do we recognize that there's going to be other folks out there who don't? And what does that mean, right? So that's a pretty profound thing to think about. And of course, what does that mean for the rise of other businesses and products and how they're going to utilize AI? And so it's kind of interesting to think about that future. But the speed of which we move is going to be, like I said, is going to profoundly be changed by AI. If I just think as an example, we do a lot of work, obviously, in hypersonic vehicles. Hypersonic vehicles are those vehicles moving at greater than Mach 5. Any of you seen Top Gun 2, right? There's a hypersonic, vehicle at the very beginning of it. There's a great example. So you're going through a mission incredibly faster than has ever been done before. Well, how do you manage that vehicle? How do you manage the mission? How do you process all that information? How do you wind up at the right place at the right time? You got to take in a whole lot more data than you've probably ever taken in before, and you got to do it a lot faster. So there's another example of where I think AI is going to have a profound effect on opening the aperture of what we can do, because the limiting factor in many of the cases is, as I mentioned before, kind of the human ability to process things. And as you get towards the edge, if you will, of the operations, you only have so many humans, you only have so much compute power. So how does AI assist in those kinds of cases? That's where I think you're going to see a pretty interesting revolution with the use of AI.
Great. Well, thank you. And I mean, interesting from a development perspective, sort of an innovation and academic perspective, also from a defense perspective of the different ways that AI is coming to impact and change the way all of your businesses operate here in Orlando. So incredibly thankful for the three of you to join us today. Please help me to thank this panel.